everyone! Welcome to Solving with Exponents and Radicals. Today we're going to be doing 3 questions here on the Disney Channel. First of all, we're going to need some paper. Let's see. How am I supposed to do that? There we go. Now, let's start off with our first question. Just write it down right here. Bingo! We got ourselves a 2, x to the 0, y to the negative 4th, z to the cube, over 2xy squared z cubed, and x4 y cubed z squared. Obviously, doing this all at once would be a little too much, so let's go ahead and split our equation into 2, shall we? Okay, we've split them both up. Let's begin with our top part, shall we? So we have ourselves a 2 here. That's going to remain constant. We have a 0th power. Now, the thing with 0th powers is that they make that number 1 instantly. So we know that this will not factor into the rest of our equation. We have a y to the negative 4th, and what we do with negative exponents is we take the number, put it below the rest of the equation, and then change this from a negative to a positive. So it will be this whole thing over y to the 4th power. The z to the 3rd power will remain the same. Let's go ahead and write that out. There we go. Now we have put our equation here. Hey yo gamers, editor's note here. It seems as if we forgot to do something and the footage got deleted. You see this bad boy right here? We're about to split this thing up because we just finished this part of the equation. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this part of it right here, split that up from this part of it right here. Right here there should be a negative 2 right here, as well as up here in this equation. With all that out of the way, I'm going to get back to the video, because it's going to jump a ways in where we've already factored this negative 2 over here, which does exist, by the way, into this entire equation right here. You got that? Good. Back to your regularly scheduled programming. There we go. Now we have a x to the negative 8th, y to the negative 6th, z to the negative 4th. Because negative 2 times 2 is negative 4, times 3 is going to be negative 6, and times 4 is going to be negative 8. Let's go ahead and factor in our 3 now, shall we? Alright. We've finished that one off now. Our 3 goes into each of these bits right here. So 3 times 3 would be 9, times 2 would be 6, times 1, that's a 1 right there. When there's no exponent shown, there's a 1. 3 times 1 would be 3. And 2 to the 3rd power would be 2 times 2 times 2. 4, 8. Now let's go ahead and combine these two together, shall we? Let's not, actually. This is a little bit too big of an equation to combine into this one. Let's just start with our x then, shall we? Let's stop here for a second. We have our negative 8, and we've multiplied that by 3, because like terms attract each other. That gives us a negative 24. Our 8 will remain unchanged because it doesn't have an x in the 8th slot. Let's move on to our y's and our z's, because we have figured out that the 8 does not change. And there we go. Now, for our bottom equation, we have 8x to the negative 24th, y to the negative 36, because 6 times 6 is 36, and there's a negative, and z to the negative 36, because 4 times 9 is 36, and there's a negative. Now that we have both sides of our equation, let's go ahead and recombine them together again. There we go. We have put this equation from over here into the bottom of our equation again. So now we have 2z cubed over, in parentheses, 8x to the 24th, y to the negative 36, z to the negative 36, and parenthesis, plus y to the 4th. I put the plus here because our y to the 4th is not part of this y. We will not be multiplying them. We will simply be putting them together through addition. Hey yo gamers, future me again, here to explain to you some things. You see this 4 right here? We're not actually adding the y to the 4th. We're multiplying it in, because that's how exponents works. It's a little confusing. I said add because we're adding that 4 to the negative 36, but really, we're just multiplying the y and the y. You got that? Alright, now back to your regular ways. I'm gonna stop right there. Let's go ahead and simplify this entire area real quick. Alright. Now that we have this at the bottom, let's go ahead and figure out what we do with these negatives. We don't like negatives here. They are very rotten, very rude. They don't give us a good mindset. We want them to become positive. So we're going to raise all of them back up here. So there will be 24x's up here, 32y's up here, and 36z's up here. That may be an issue though. If we take this 36 and just put it up there, we will have 3 z's that aren't accounted for. So what we must do is take the 36 and the 3. This is a positive now, by the way. Let's go ahead and combine those. We're going to get a 39. Let's see what happens down here. Okay. Now we have all of our stuff moved over to the top, and we have only an 8 remaining. Now an 8 and a 2, they're both like terms, and they have 2 in common. So we can turn this into a 1, and we can turn this one into a 4. Let's see how that will turn out, shall we? And just like that, we have gotten our answer. X to the 24th, y to the 32nd, z to the 39 over 4. Let's move on to our next question, because it's a real doozy. Okay, let's just write it out. Alright, there we go. We have negative 10 and the cube root of 128, m to the 3rd, n to the 10th, p to the 3rd. Looks like we're going to have a little bit of trouble here, so let's forget about the 10 for now. Move that one down here for the time being. Let's just focus on this part. Alright. Now we have just our radical. We have a cube root here, meaning that we're going to need 3 of a number in order to get it on the outside of the cube. Let's look at our variables first. We have a 3 right here, and a 3 right here. Those will both be 1s, so we can put an m and a p out here. As for this n, however, we have 10. So what we could do with that is do n. Oh, look at that. Poor little Jimmy down here is an outlier. These 3 all have rows. So we will be putting 3 n's out here. Now let's go ahead and focus on that 28. 128 to be exact. There we go. I've written out a little table for us here. We have our 128 up here, which can be divided by 2 to get 64. Then again for 32, then again for 16, then again for 8, then again for 4, and finally for 2. This is the lowest we can go. If we go any further, we'll just get 1, and we don't want that. So let's look at what we have here. This is the amount of 2's that we can take out of the radical. We need 3 for a 2 to get outside, and we have 6. So we can have 2 sets of 2's or a 4. Let's see that written out, shall we? Alright. So now we have our 4 outside of the radical, our m outside, 3 n's, and a p. Inside, we still have the 2 and the n, because this n is a very naughty boy, with only 1 instead of 3. And this 2 is the lowest we can possibly go before we get to 1. Now let's go ahead and look all the way back up here at our negative 10. Alright, we have our negative 10 here, and he wants to intrude upon our lovely town right down here, including our little prisoners over here. Nobody likes you, Ed. Let's go ahead and try to introduce him to our society by combining him with number 4. And there we go. Now we have negative 40 because negative 10 and 4 is negative 40. We have our m from this area up here, our 3 n's from right here, nobody likes you, and our p from right here. We still have our root because we have to have our 2 from over here, and our n still from right here because nobody likes him. It is very important for all of us to know that. You have reached your final answer for this equation. Let us move on to our final question for today. A little crumbly here, excuse me. Alright, for this final equation, we have negative square root of 5 minus 4 square root of 3 in one parenthesis, and in the other, we have negative 2 square root of 5 and negative 5 square root of 4n. Let's go ahead and separate this equation into 2 parts, shall we? Let's go ahead and stop here before we make our second equation. We have ourselves this very important 4 here. What people may know about a 4 is that it can be divided into 2 parts, a 2 and a 2. A 4 is a perfect square. We like perfect squares. We don't like
Jimmy!
Let's go ahead and move this 4 outside as a 2 before we continue writing our equations. And there we go. Now we have 2 simplified equations. One of them has our first part from up here, and the other has our second part. Let's go ahead and start with our first part equation. What we can do here is we can combine those and those. Foil them together. A 5 times a 5 in the radicals would be 25. Our negatives are going to turn into positives. And we can move a 5 into here. Let's go ahead and write out what we just said, shall we? And there we go. We now have the first part of our equation finished. Almost is what I would say. This 25 here is a perfect square, and we like those. So we can move this one out here as a 5. Let's go ahead and do that and then move on to our next equation. And there we go.
There we not go, am I right? It seems as if we've forgotten even more footage. How do I let that happen? This accent's gonna get increasingly terrible, so we might as well end it here. We got ourselves this whole equation right here, moving into the rest of these. That 4 will become positive when it combines with those negatives, and 4 times 2 will be 8, times 10 will be 40. Now we're going to be moving this 3 into the 3n over here, making it a 3n. Yeah, that's right. We got to move this 3 into the 15, making it 15. Man, I'm answering these things before I can even say them out loud. Now, none of those can be further simplified, so what we got is our final answer right down here. Let's get back to your regularly scheduled garden arms.
Now, we have 8 square root 15 plus 40 square root 3n plus 10 plus 10 square root 5n. There's no more terms we can connect together, so we'll write it out in the best form possible. And there we go. Over here, we have a 10 square root 5n, because 5n is the biggest variable we have. 40 square root 3n is our second biggest. If they have n's, even though we don't like n over here, he's very rude, not very friendly. If they have an n, that means that they are higher than the rest of these. We have 8 square root 15, because 15 goes into 3 and 5, and neither of those can be put outside of the equation. And finally, we have solid old 10 over here. And the reason we have the 10 all the way over here is because I want you, yes you, to rate this video a 10 out of 10. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a good day. Love y'all.